Hello, welcome to Pike Creek Farm, and today I'm going to process some tomatoes and I'm going to show you how I do them. And I use the Ball Blue book. I do the tomatoes raw in their own juice, so it's a different process. It has a longer water bath time. You can also pressure can them, but I'm going to water bath them because I know more people do that, and that's how I've always done them. I've always water bathed my tomatoes, and this is how my mom did them, and just, we keep up with whatever the recommendation is. So if you have this book or even your National Center for Home Preservation or the other books, there's a lot of way to do tomatoes. Make sure you read. The processing time can go like from 20 to 30 minutes to 40, and for what I'm doing, it's an hour 25 for quarts or pints. And let me show you, okay, what I'm doing. I am doing tomatoes packed in their own juice. And you can do them whole, half, or quartered. You gotta acidify them. You can add salt. You can also add seasoning. And I have a video where I made my seasoning for my tomatoes. I did Cajun, Mexican, and Italian. So like the Cajun, this is the first year, but I'm excited about it. The Italian I use for when I'm making homemade spaghetti sauce in my crock pot, let it cook all day, and it is my family's favorite spaghetti sauce. My kids always loved it growing up, more than my home canned sauce. They like this the best, and my husband does too. I use the Mexican for chili, and we love chili. I use the Italian even for goulash, soups. I use the Mexican for soups, for not just chili. And the Cajun, I think, is going to be really fun to make some recipes with that. And I do a lot of plain. You don't have to season them at all. But I thought I'd bring you along as I am canning tomatoes and how I do it. So welcome to Pike Creek Farm, and my name is Renee, and thank you so much for joining me today. Okay, the tomatoes are washed. My jars are all washed and they have hot water in them. You want to have a hot jar when you put these tomatoes in. Now it's going to cool off because the tomatoes are not warm. But I do have my canner, my water bath canner back here, and it is on low. You don't want it to be hot, but you want it to be not cold. Here's the tomatoes. And I have another bowl like this too. So I'm not gonna make you watch me do them all. So I'm gonna put these over here. And I will put them into the hot water, and then when the peels start to peel off, you can tell that they'll just come off. I will put them in the jars. I'm gonna core my tomatoes before I put them in. You don't have to, I've done it both ways. I think it kind of helps with the skins. And I have a combination of different kinds of tomatoes. I don't have all Roma. And then put an X on the bottom and put it in the water and let it cook there for a while, steam, and the skin will come loose. I know that some people put them in the freezer and then they make sauce, and I do that, but you can't use frozen tomatoes for this process. This is raw tomatoes in their own juice, and it's its own special thing. I have my quart jar. I'm going to put some lemon juice in it. 1 tablespoon for pints, 2 tablespoons for quarts. And the processing time in the water bath canner is the same for pints and quarts. This is going to be plain. I'm not going to put any seasoning in this one. I am going to add some salt. You can add up to 2 teaspoons is what's recommended for quarts. I'm just going to put one because I will add salt when I cook them in something. So now I'm going to take my tomatoes out and into this bowl. So they're not quite so hot to handle either. So let me bring you down. What we do next is we take the tomatoes, and as you can see, these skins just come right off. And the outside of the tomato is hot from being in the water, but they are not cooked. So then you can put them in whole or half or quartered. So depending on the size of the tomato is what I do. And if they're really, really big, then I might like even eighth them. If it's like a jumbo tomato. And if you don't like the seeds in your tomatoes, when you go to use these, you could put them through a strainer and it will come right out. So we're just going to keep plopping in the tomatoes. I like using a wide mouth jar because you want the natural juice to come out, so you can use a utensil to mash it down and see the natural juice comes out. There's another one. That skin just fell right off of that one. I believe it's 1 inch headspace. Let me double check. I always double check, and I didn't double check that, so I'll be right back. 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch is where we want it to come up to, the juices. If there's a spot that's not quite as ripe, you can cut that out. There's a little part that's not as ripe there. I'm just going to cut that little sliver out. You want the juice to come out of the tomatoes though as you're doing this and fill in all the gaps. I am going to take my debubbler, go down all the sides and into the middle to make sure there's no air pockets. I'm going to measure headspace, and we are there. Wet and wipe any residue that can be on here. Double check there's no chips, cracks on that edge. Then we take the lid, ring, and finger tight. And this is ready to go into the canner. Isn't it beautiful? But like I said, when I take this out, this will probably be up like that, and there will be tomato water here. Don't worry, that's normal. This next jar, I'm going to season with Italian. So I'm going to put an eye on there, and I will know that's Italian then. Just so I don't get it confused with the other ones I'm going to season. So first step is 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. You can also use citric acid. I've always just used lemon juice. I do have some citric acid that I want to try because I've never done that before. Then I'm going to use my Italian seasoning. I have it labeled. I do have a video on making the seasonings. And I'm going to put 1 tablespoon in. It's 2 teaspoons for a pint. Now we just start adding the tomatoes, just like we did before. So here's that one I didn't use all of. Cut in half. I make the best spaghetti sauce. Well, we think it's the best spaghetti sauce using these Italian tomatoes. I just wanted to come on here and show you how I do it and the method I follow. And just to let you know, I mean, even though I love my steam canner, you can't steam can these. I do put a towel down because look, it's getting pretty messy. Oh, there's part of the skin. Get that out of there. We are good. Now to clean that edge because it gets pretty messy. Wipe it and then put the one I labeled I on there and finger tight. And ready to go. Let me check the water in the canner. It is good now. So I'm going to set these on the rack in my canner. So I am going to keep filling these. I'm going to try and use all quarts. If I come to the end and it's not enough to fill a quart, I can fill a pint and the time will be the same. So these are the tomatoes I have left. I'm going to put them, I have a Ziploc freezer bag in the freezer that I've started adding tomatoes to. I have like 3 or 4 already full. So these will just get added to that. I will take off the core and drop them in the bag. So I'm going to add the water. You want it to be 1 inch to 2 inches above the tops of the jars. It is over 1 inch now. So I'm going to put the lid on and turn the heat up some more and get this to a full rolling boil. And once it's at that full rolling boil, turn my timer on for 85 minutes. 1 hour and 25 minutes. It is starting to boil, but you want it at a full rolling boil, not just this sputtering type boil. We are about there now. It is pretty much boiling kind of crazy, and I will turn the timer on for 1 hour and 25 minutes. They are done. Whoops, gonna get some steam. I turned off the heat. Now I do have one that buckled. I have not had that happen in a long time. I must have tightened that too tight, and going back through my brain, I think there was probably one I did and I didn't back it off. So that's my fault. That jar I will probably, I don't know if I'll make something this week or if I will put it into a freezer bag and freeze it. But I will be taking these out in a few minutes. I took the lid off and let the boiling subside, and then I waited a few minutes, like 5 minutes, and then I pulled it up, and I'm gonna let it sit here for 5-10 minutes before I put them over onto the counter. I don't want them to shock. And I don't know if you can see, there's a little red tinge in my water, so I had a little bit of siphoning. Here are my jars all washed, the rings off, and ready to go down to the pantry. And the one jar that was had the wonky lid, I used that to make some goulash the other night, so it's all good. We had goulash and it was wonderful. So we have plain. This is the Cajun. You can see the spices down there. This one is Mexican, and see, it's kind of the same color spices, so I'm glad I labeled my jars. And here is the Italian. And of course, just the beautiful plain ones, and I do more of those because it's a little more versatile, but I really like having the pre-seasoned tomatoes too for some quick dinners and quick recipes, and you know, you come home from work, it just saves some time. So this is how I do tomatoes canned in their own juice, water bath canning. And you can see how much time it took. Doing the jars themselves is pretty easy. It's just the processing time, and the end result is beautiful, fresh tasting tomatoes in their own juice on your shelf. And I love that fact. And I'm gonna try doing the pressure canning next time to just compare the time it takes, because I know it's an hour 25 in the water bath, but in a pressure canner, you have to bring it up, you know, to the temperature, let it vent for 10 minutes, and then bring it up to pressure, and then process, and then let it release naturally, come back down. So I'm not sure if you're saving a lot of time, really. So that's why I wanted to show you the water bath canning, because it's the more common tool that everyone has. Not everyone has a pressure canner. And a water bath canner is very inexpensive to invest in if you want to start canning. So this video will be under my canning playlist, and I have a lot more under there if you want to go watch more videos on canning. So I just want to thank everyone for being here today. And if you like this video, if you push the like button, and if you want to see more canning videos and vintage recipes, subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you here. See you next time at Pike Creek Farm.